In 1996, Lara Croft Tomb Raider helped usher in the age of 3D platforming with tricky puzzles, exciting gunplay, and a sexy female protagonist with barely more polygons than a Minecraft creeper. Hey, it was the 90s, we took what we could get. But after the first 2 or 3 games, the franchise grew a little stale. Sure, the graphics gradually got better with each title, but there's only so much of the same old dungeon crawling you can do before people get bored. The Tomb Raider IP experienced this as critics began tearing newer releases apart. I mean, we didn't even see a decent game for a while until Guardian of Light came out in 2010. And when the best game in your 3D action-adventure franchise in a decade is a twin-stick shooter, you're doing something wrong. So when it was announced that Tomb Raider was getting a gritty reboot, we were skeptical. But the face on the cover of Game Informer sure looked nice, but we've been fooled by a pretty face before. Angel of Darkness sought to revamp the series only to fall flat. 2013's revival, however, was marginally successful in winning fans over. The gameplay was enjoyable, with action style similar to Naughty Dog's Uncharted series, an engaging story that, while unspectacular, was worth my attention, and graphics that really took advantage of modern hardware. While the gameplay was much more focused on action rather than puzzling, the occasional tomb would contain a brainbuster or two for players to dwell on. Overall, the game did its job in keeping the franchise alive, only this time with some dignity. That's why Square Enix's Tomb Raider gets VGHL's surprise hit of 2013. Hopefully the upcoming sequels in the near future maintain this momentum and even put the name Lara Croft back in the spotlight.
The competition for worst game of 2013 was fierce this year. From the always online shenanigans that went on with the new SimCity, to the fully clothed puppet banging and awful driving mechanics of Ride to Hell Retribution, there were some pretty standout bad games this year. But in the end, one title stood alone below any other. So bad that the publisher decided to take it off shelves, issue a formal apology, and give all their customers a full refund. Ash's Cricket 2013. In a word, one could call it unfinished, but that really doesn't quite do the game justice. The character models move about as realistically as an army of polo-wearing tin soldiers. The swinging and throwing animations rarely if ever line up with the ball, and the gameplay itself is about as reliable as a roulette wheel. In short, nearly nothing about this game works, to the point of hilarity. The developers blame the engine since they had managed to make an acceptable earlier installment of the series back in 2010, but I still think it's on them and the publisher for thinking that this game was anywhere near ready for release. But regardless of who messed up or how, Ash's Cricket 2013 stands as one of the biggest game development disasters in recent memory. And for that, we can't help but recognize it.
I'm gonna cut to the chase. The winner of VGHL's 2013 Game of the Year is Last of Us, and boy does this game deserve it. For those who don't know, Last of Us is an action-adventure survival horror game set in a zombie apocalypse where a deadly strain of the cordyceps fungus has caused people to become zombies, and you, as the cynical Joel, who has lived in the apocalypse for 20 years after the outbreak and death of his daughter, must protect Ellie, a 14-year-old girl who holds the key to the future of humanity on a journey through an America ravaged by 2 decades of the end of the world. This is all brought to you by Uncharted developer Naughty Dog, so we knew it was going to be something special, but until it came out, we didn't know how right we were. The gameplay is a refreshing change of pace. Gaming in recent years has shifted to making the player this invincible powerhouse who's just going to run and gun through any opposition in front of him. Last of Us constantly forces you to face the fact that you are vulnerable, that you are facing down a plague that could snuff you out in an instant. And that suspense makes the game a heart-pounding thrill to play. Limited resources and a real-time crafting system that forces you to think out every combat decision you make, adding to the intensity of this game, brings that suspense in droves. The Plague, aka the Infected, which exists to haunt your nightmares in forms, runners, stalkers, clickers, and bloaters, make especially fantastic enemies, sorry hostile humans and cannibals. They are terrifying for the reasons that zombies should be. And it's insatiable hunger compounded by the feeling that they will eventually overwhelm you because you do not have what it takes to stop them. And when you hear the sound of a clicker around the corner, the one that goes... yeah, that one. You just tense up and quickly try and remember how many bullets or shivs you have so you can figure out whether you can take them. Well, the single player is really what makes this game great. The multiplayer is nothing to laugh at. Well, on the surface, it looks like any other deathmatch-centered multiplayer. It adds enough mechanics from the game, such as the crafting system and the focus on stealth, to give it a different feel from the Call of Duties in the world. Plus, with new DLC around the corner, you can bet you still haven't heard the last of Last of Us.